Hi everyone, it's Anna, also known as Book Anna. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some books that I recommend to read this fall. I read all of these books, some of them I didn't like as much, but I do see that other people did enjoy them, so I still recommend them. Previous video I talked about all the books that I want to read, so I just figured this is going to be one that I tell you what to read. I have 15 books. I have like a sentence to 2 sentences each. Let's just get started. Starting off, we have first a graphic cozy novel, and that would be The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. There's, I believe, 3 graphic novels in this series. In this novel, we have this art form of tea brewing and taking care of these tea dragons that actually grow herbs on them so you can brew them for teas. And we are following this character that is learning about it from a tea shop, and it's really cozy. And then in the second novel you learn a little bit more history of the tea dragons, and yeah, it's just a cozy little graphic novel, and I recommend it if you want like that, if you don't have enough time but you still want to have this fall vibe thing. Yeah, that's the one. Next one is still on a cozy side, but a little bit more scary. It's YA fantasy, and that would be An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. In this one, we have a painter that is tasked with painting a portrait of a fae prince. She does something that she shouldn't have never done, and that is she portrays feelings on his face in this portrait, and fae shouldn't ever be shown with feelings, because now he is embarrassed and he takes her to Fae Court so she can explain herself and apologize to everyone. He takes her on this journey through the woods, and it's very fall vibey because there's all these leaves that are like red and orange and like the wood feel. So yeah, that's the next one. The next one I just read, and I personally did not enjoy it at all, almost, but I am aware that people love this book and now it's part of the series, and that would be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. If you haven't read this one, you should. It is quite fall vibey. You should know that the main character of this book is very annoying, and basically the whole book is about her heart growing bigger and bigger because she needs to help people of Lost Land, in which she goes because she wants to find out more about fairies living there. It is fall vibey. There's maybe end of fall, beginning of winter feel. There's a lot of that. So yeah, I recommend this one for you, even though I didn't like it. The next one I have is actually a manga series which I talked about a lot in my previous videos, and that would be Promised Neverland by Kaiu Shirai. This is the 14th part, but I recommend every part. You should start from the first one, definitely. We are following orphans that are trying to escape the orphanage they're in because they find out that it's not what it looks like. It's a horror story. The main cast of characters is kids, and I didn't read a lot of stories in which kids are the main characters and it's so much horror in it. Halloween vibes too, but like a little more kid-friendly. Well, not actually, no, it's not kid-friendly. The next 2 ones I have are both short story collections. First one is Robots vs. Fairies. These are short horror stories, sci-fi, horror, fantasy. Through all of these stories, we are actually having kind of the same themes in like humanity and violence, and how would humans coexist with robots or fairies, and would there be a war between us? All of these stories have different approach to that theme. I talked about this show already, but Love, Death, Robots, it takes a story from this book. So I did enjoy these short stories mostly. I did enjoy them quite a lot. Some of them were not as good, but most of them I really recommend. The next short story collection that I have is Fungi, which is a short story collection based on mushrooms and how fungi could take over the world that we live in, and it's really horror, and I recommend this one if you are a fan of Last of Us. Read this short story collection because it reminded me so much of the whole story. Next book I have already talked about, and that would be Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is one of my favorite books. This one follows Naomi as she gets a letter from her cousin, and her cousin is telling her to come and help her. So she goes into this house. She finds out weird things about a whole family that lives there, weird rituals that are taking place, and this fungi that is taking over this whole area. So yeah, it's horror, it's very autumn vibey, and it has a lot of fungi talk and mushroom talks, which I love, as I already said before. So yeah, I recommend this one a lot. The next one I have is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. This one I also didn't enjoy as much as I wanted to, but again, I think it's a good book. So this story takes place in dual timelines. One, we follow the tragic accident of two Burkhand's students. Burkhand is the school for ladies. And in the second one, we are following a film crew that is trying to film a movie based on the said accident. If you like bees, I would recommend this one because, yeah, there's a lot of bees imagery in this one, as you can see from the cover. The next book I have is another one of my favorites, and that would be House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. So this is about a house that is bigger from inside than that is outside. There are tapes that are telling us a story of the family that lives in this house, and also a story of the expeditions that took place in this house. We also have this main character that cannot differentiate between reality and his nightmares as he's reading about this House of Leaves. It is a very thick book. It is a very hard book to start reading because, you know, I was frightened of it's just a massive book. But when you start reading it, it's not hard to read, really. It's really easy to get through. There's a lot of pages that are just one word at a page, so I would truly recommend this one. Okay, now we are going a little bit into dark academia. First one I have on this list is Catherine House by Elisabeth Thomas. So this is a dark academia story about a student in this Catherine House, and students in Catherine House need to give up 3 years of their lives and just be in this Catherine House without going outside, without having a phone or anything, and they could just be on the premise of this house. So she starts to uncover some dark secrets about societies in this house and what is actually happening, because after you go out of this house, you get fame. When it came out, it was very popular on booktube, and then I didn't hear anybody else talking about it since then, so I'm talking about it now, and I do recommend it if you like dark academia, definitely. The next one I have is again one that is really popular, and that would be Babel by R.F. Kuang. Again, one of those thick books, but it's really easy to get through because the story is again so compelling, and it takes you in. So this takes place in Oxford in the time of 1828, I believe it starts, when our main character Robin is taken away from his hometown Canton by this professor from Oxford, and his whole childhood is actually just preparing for going to Oxford. There's this magic system in this book in which you can make magic by saying phrases in different languages, and you need to have like a really good understanding of these languages. So in his case, he's learning ancient Greek, Latin, and Chinese, and this is not just a fantasy story that you may think it is. It's actually story about colonizers and how they take away from these other cultures, and they make these other cultures submissive to them by taking away from them and giving them drugs or something else. It is a historical novel and it has some fantasy elements, but I do think the historical and colonizer thing is actually the main part of the story. The next book I talked about in my previous video because I also read it quite recently, and that is Our Hideous Progeny by C.E. McGill. I mean, the cover of this book is already pretty fall vibey, but yeah, this is a retelling of Frankenstein, but we are looking at the story from a woman's perspective. Our main character is called Mary, and she's a biologist and geologist as much as she can be in the time of 1800s. One day she finds a letter from her grandfather in which he talks about how his brother disappeared and experiments that he has done. So she tries to recreate these experiments, but again, this is not a story about actual experiment as much as it is a story about how women were treated in scientific area in 1800s, how they couldn't do as much as they can now, and I really enjoyed this one. Again, I think it's very, very compelling story, and it's very pretty written. Like, the writing style in this book is gorgeous, and it really reminded me of a classic book. And now, when we are already at classics, for the last 3 books I have some classics. First one I have is We Have Always Lived in a Castle by Shirley Jackson. So this book follows 2 sisters that are the only ones left alive from their family. The rest of their family died in this weird accident, and the whole town in which they live now wants to murder them because they accuse them of killing their family. So we are following them as they are trying to live their lives, and they're trying to just, be alive. This is a very short book, and I recommend it if you don't have enough time. If you like classics and if you like a little bit of horror in them, I recommend this one a lot. The next one I have is a bit of a horror mystery novel, and that would be Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. In this one we have a man, a widowed man, because his wife died, and now he has taken a new wife, but this new wife just feels like she's living in a shadow of his deceased wife. She sees her everywhere, and she feels like she's coming between them in their marriage, and she's trying to be okay with her existence before she came, but she cannot. We are following her as she's battling these feelings of being unwanted and just being a replacement. Also, there's a bit of a mystery in the disappearance of Rebecca. So yeah, it's a classic horror story, and I recommend all of these a lot. But again, one of those that I just loved very much when I read it. And the last one I have is a completely different, because it's not horror at all. The story between these 2 characters, the love story, is pretty scary because it's a bit abusive, and it's a lot abusive. But it's a different in a way that it's not horror. So that would be Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and this is a windy, heartbreaking love story between 2 individuals who cannot and shouldn't ever be together. I picked this one up because of the imagery of this windy, big hills in which the story takes place. Very hard-hitting story, but I think it's a good fall book. I would read this in the fall just because it is depressing. So yeah, that's the last one. Alright, that would be all the books. I hope you are going to take some of my recommendations and that you're going to try to read at least one of them. Thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!